This is draft season. Hello, everybody. We are about a week away from the 2022 NFL Draft. My name is John Schmeelk. My cohorts, as always, on this fine program, Tony, Pauline, and Eric Crocker. Gentlemen, we're in the home stretch here. I know it was a holiday weekend, so not a whole lot going on inside some of these NFL buildings, but our man with the ear to the pavement is Tony Pauline. Tony, what's the latest buzz? You got a couple nuggets to drop on us? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, really nothing because, like you said, because of the holidays and the fact you had three holidays converge this weekend, the most of the front offices were closed. They're having their final draft meetings now, so maybe we can have part two of this video cast on Friday. I'll have a lot more information then. But really nothing that's out there right now. I think you're going to start to hear some breaking news come Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, and by the way, we are going to have two episodes of draft season next week before the start of the draft. We'll have one on Monday, one on Wednesday. Monday will be our draft buzz one, and then we'll have a little bit of that on Wednesday, but we're going to do our final mock draft on Wednesday as well. So make sure you guys go subscribe to the draft season on your favorite podcast platforms. If you're an Apple Podcast, leave that 5-star positive review. Croc, how was your weekend, man? Are you ready to go? Are you getting psyched here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, draft time is kind of exhausting watching all these different prospects. And then as you get closer to it, it's like, you know what? You start to get that excitement again and just see where guys land.
Yeah, big show coming your way today, by the way. We're going to touch on some of the teams that have multiple picks in the first round in this draft. Then the fans did a great job. I put it out there on Twitter the other day asking for a bunch of player prospect evaluations. They got so many, I had to split them into two groups, one for this week, one for next week. So we'll get to those as well. So let's get to it, guys. This is an odd draft. You have 8 teams with 2 picks in the first round. What does that also mean? There's 8 teams with no picks in the first round of this year's draft. And it's a lot of the teams picking early. You take a look at it, 4 of the top 5 teams in this draft picking 2, 3, 4, and 5 all have multiple picks. So let's go in order, I suppose. The Lions are first. They select early in the draft, then they pick again at the end of round 1. You know, in a lot of ways, their draft process here is going to be dictated by who Jacksonville picks at 1. My feel here right now, guys, is Walker or Hutchinson, whichever guy Jacksonville doesn't pick, that's probably going to be the pick for Detroit, though I've heard Tavon Thibodeau could be in the mix there too. What are your guys' thoughts for Detroit here, who not only, again, have that pick at 2, but then have that pick at the end of round 1, then on the wraparound, they have that pick at the top of round 2 as well. And maybe how might that impact their thought process? Tony, let's start with you.
Well, yeah, I think Detroit is still in a situation where they got to go best player available. And even though wide receiver is probably a bigger need than edge rusher right now, they got to go edge rusher at the top of the draft because there is no receiver that's worthy of a top 5 pick. I think with that second pick, which is the bottom of round 1, they can look maybe at a wide receiver, maybe a linebacker. But I think they have to go edge rusher. 1, they need an edge rusher. 2, it's the best player available.
I think, also looking at it, they could be in the market for a quarterback. And I know a lot of people say they like Jared Goff and kind of how he ended the season. But, is he the long-term answer? And most, people that I speak to, whether it's around the Lions organization, podcasters, things like that, or even some of the fans, they're like, nah, man, they're not going quarterback or in that direction. They do have an opportunity, though, at pick 32 to potentially get a 5th-year option on the quarterback. And I think, in this cap-sensitive type era right now, having a guy where you can kind of control the cost of him and limit it from, really kind of exploding up there, I think that's ideal. But, Tony also talked about them potentially needing a receiver. And they have to really revamp that whole thing. You have St. Brown, and I like him. And outside of him, there's just not a whole lot there that's going to be very exciting. So if you're a team that's picking at 32 and also, early pick in the second round as well, they'll definitely have an opportunity to address the receiver position.
Yeah, and by the way, this podcast is presented by Tommy Hilfiger, a PVH brand and an official partner of the New York Giants. And Krog, I think you made a great point. They could do both, right? They pick 32, last pick in the first round, then they flip around. They pick at 34. So if they want that 5th year on a quarterback, pick him at 32, wait till 34 for the receiver. So I guess the question I'll ask you guys, where do you think those two positions are going to be when you get to pick 32 and 34? What wide receivers do you feel really confident won't be there and are going to be gone? And what quarterbacks do you think might still be available at those two spots? Croc?
I think, a lot of people are looking at like Matt Corral, right? And he, who I think has a lot of ability, but still there's some question marks, and people kind of question, how good is the arm? Or, obviously we see the athleticism, but his ability to kind of play all script, he does those things pretty well. I think from a receiver standpoint, I mean, you might have a guy like Treylon Burks on the clock still, George Pickens out of Georgia. That's a guy that can still potentially be there for receiver. I mean, this is a pretty deep class from the receiver standpoint from picks. I'd say 15 to like 60. I think it's really strong there. So I think them at pick 34, they'll have kind of a really good opportunity to get a receiver that can come in and be one of their better guys. And even the alpha receiver that you're not potentially, you typically kind of be off the board in that range, but they'll have a guy that can potentially come in and be a legit wide receiver one type guy.
Tony,
No,
your thoughts?
I think it depends on the value of the receiver. I mean, if Treylon Burks is there, do they like him? If Jahan Dotson is there, do they like him at the end of round one? Remember, the 33rd pick is Jacksonville. They're not going to take a quarterback. Maybe they could trade down to a team that wants a quarterback, but Jacksonville isn't going to take a quarterback with the 33rd pick. So I guess they got to look at their value board. They got to go with the best player available on their board. If the highest rated player is a receiver, that's the direction they should go. If the highest rated player is a quarterback, that's the direction you go. When you're a team like Detroit that has been, it's been miserable year after year after year, you're in no position to draft for need. You've got to collect good players. You've got to go with the best player available, within reason.
So you don't think that fifth-year option would tilt them to go on quarterback at 32 there, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, it's something you got to consider. But, again, they have Goff. Are you going to take a quarterback at the end of round one when you may have a better quarterback class next year, and the Detroit Lions are not going to win a lot of games next year? They may be a better team, but I still think they're going to be a top 15 team that selects in the top 15 next year. But again, when you reach for need, and there's only a two pick difference, but when you reach for need, you end up regretting it down the road.
Croc, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, now Tony, touched on the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they might do at pick 33. They're not going to take quarterback. They're not going to take receiver as well. They just spent a lot of money on receivers in free agency. So there's still an opportunity. If they don't take a receiver or quarterback or whatever at pick 32, mm-hmm. that guy, whatever guy that they would take in that range should still be available for them at 34.
All right, let's go to the next pick. Houston Texans. They not only select number 3 there in the first round, they also have the 13th pick, which they got from the Browns in that trade for Deshaun Watson. So that's 2 top 15 picks here, guys. And for me, Houston is still the team I have the least amount of feel for with that pick at 3rd overall. They have so many needs. So what are your feel there for their 2 selections at 3 and 13? I really think that pick at 13 is the real first pivot point in this draft, where I could see Hamilton still in the mix. I could see corner. Though Lovie Smith, generally not a guy that favors a lot of corners. I could see edge. I could even see an offensive lineman. So, Tony, what's your feel for Houston there at 3? And then when they come around at 13, do you think that's probably a good spot there for a wideout maybe for them?
I think with that first pick, who do they like better, the pass rusher or the offensive lineman? If there's a big-time pass rusher there, which there will be, do they like that pass rusher, say, better than Evan Neal or Aquanu? If they don't, they need a right tackle. You got a young quarterback there. I think they can go right tackle with that first pick or pass rusher. I think later on, it's the same sort of situation. Are you looking at George Karlaftis with that second pick of round 1 to fill your pass rusher need, a good player who deserves, to be a top 15 pick? Would you consider Trevor Penning, who fills the need at right tackle? They also do need a receiver. Drake London is there. Do you take Drake London to help Davis Mills come along? I think they're in a good spot. I think they're in a position where they will be able to get a good player, a highly rated player, the best player available, with those first 2 picks that will also fill needs.
I think when you look at what they want to do, especially at the receiver position, they just brought back Brandon Cooks. And now who's going to play opposite him and kind of be a key contributor? I talked about this being a deep receiver class, and they do have pick number 37 overall as well. So I do think there should be a good receiver for them kind of waiting there. So at pick 3 and 13, I'd kind of go with more of the impact positions, definitely offensive line or edge early on with the first pick. And then with the second pick, there are a few different ways they can go with it. I think cornerback. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Derek Stingley's there at pick 13.
Yeah.
And if he's there and you feel like he fits kind of what you want to do, which I'm not so sure, because Lovie Smith, he's been more of a too high cover two scheme defense, and Stingley is more of a pure kind of man-to-man type guy. How much do you want to take away from that and play him off in space? I think Sauce Gardner kind of fits that mold a little bit more, but I don't know if Sauce Gardner is going to be there. Matter of fact, I just don't anticipate that. So I'd say right away, especially at pick 3, go O-line or D-line. They'll have their pick. And there might be an offensive lineman that falls to them at pick 13 that they really like maybe a Trevor Penning.
Yeah, and by the way, Tony, I'm sorry.
The selection before number 12 is the Minnesota Vikings. And that could be a pivotal selection in the sense that everyone is mocking them to take Derek Stingley, but I hear they like Trent McDuffie better than as much as they like Derek Stingley, and they're looking to trade down. So pick number 12 may be an area where a team trades up to get one of those players, whether it be a pass rusher, whether it be a right tackle, to keep them away from that second Texans pick, and to get one of those two positions.
And McDuffie might be a better fit for what Lovie Smith and those guys do with the Texans as well.
Yeah, as more of a zone guy, given what he did at Washington. And you talk to people in Houston, they still think that Titus Howard can play at offensive tackle too. So I talked to somebody that covers Houston this morning, and he told me that, look, if you're going to draft an offensive lineman, they're probably going to want to put him at guard first and then maybe move him out to give Howard another shot. Maybe they trade Laramie Tunsil down the road. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind as you take a look at that. And of course, the Texans too have then the pick at the top of the second round as well. When they come around, they have the pick at 37 too. So you'll keep an eye on that as they come around. As Houston, really, they're still in the early stages of their rebuild, just making the Watson trade. They finally have that clean slate that they're working on. All right, next pick, Jets at number 4, 2 top 10 picks for the Jets, 4 and 10, the 10th overall pick they got from Seattle in that Jamal Adams trade. And I was talking to Rich Cimini from ESPN. He covers the Jets for them this morning, and he said that the Jets have more faith in their cornerback crew in-house than maybe the people on the outside do. And given where Robert Saleh is from in San Francisco, where they just stack defensive lineman after defensive lineman in those drafts, I find it hard to believe they're going to go away from a pass rusher there at pick number 4. What do you think, Croc?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have their pick. I mean, I think most people are assuming that Aiden Hutchinson goes number 1 overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So at pick 2 and 3, that's going to, I think, depend on that's going to have an effect on what the Jets do there. I do think they go defensive line, but is it going to be a guy like Jermaine Johnson? Is it going to be Walker? I do think there's a little bit of rawness in the sense of where Walker is, and it kind of reminds me of what they did with, and when I say rawness, I just mean as a pure edge rusher, but it kind of reminds me of what they did with Solomon Thomas, right? In when 49ers drafted him in 2017, where he was kind of he's kind of plays interior, and he could play a little bit of edge, and they wanted him to play edge, but he wasn't quite an edge. And I think Walker, obviously a better prospect, I think in most people's eyes, but still some of those similar questions. So do they want a guy that comes straight off the edge? If so, then I could see them going with a guy like Jermaine Johnson and really revamping that defensive line. I know with Saleh in the defense with the 49ers, that was a priority of theirs. We'll see where Joe Douglas and his head is at that spot, but I'd see them build up front. And then with their second pick, number 10 overall, all signs point to receiver. But again, I just think it's such a deep receiver class. I don't know if I'd take a receiver that high. No, I see the mocks with Drake London going there, Jameson Williams going there. I mean, I feel like every receiver they've had the opportunity to mock to the New York Jets, they have. And I know they want to get their young quarterback those weapons, but I'd still lean towards building in the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets have been looking for a pass rusher since John Abraham left 20 years ago via free agency. And I mean, it's just, year after year, they can't fill that position. Again, I think it depends on how the pass rushers go. And it looks like the pass rushers are going to go early. They could go 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I said, the Jets have seemingly been stalking Jermaine Johnson, or it seems like that. So if Johnson's the only pass rusher left on the board, I could absolutely see him going in that direction. Maybe Ahmad Gardner with that 4th pick, because the Jets still need a cornerback despite their offseason signings. And then later on, you're looking at very likely a receiver. I think they could trip everybody up and take an offensive tackle or offensive lineman early, but I think it's going to be pass rusher at 4, receiver at 10. the outside possibility, a cornerback, the outside possibility of an offensive lineman.
The cornerback position is interesting because they just paid DJ Reed, and we'll see if they make him be more specific, outside a guy at the cornerback position, or do they play him at some nickel and he has some safety experience as well. Then they have Bryce Hall, and Bryce Hall, it seems like he's kind of come along a little bit, but do you pass on the prospect like Sauce Gardner because these guys who you like and the guy that you paid, or do you go with, this guy, Sauce Gardner, is just a much higher product than where you have Bryce Hall coming out?
Listen, you got Tyreek Hill in the AFC East. You got Josh Allen in the AFC East. You can never have good cornerbacks that can cover. So that's why I think cornerback has to be in the conversation. It's kind of ironic that you mentioned Solomon Thomas when he was at San Francisco, because Solomon Thomas is now on the New York Jets. Whether he's going to have any sort of impact, we'll see.
Jets also, by the way, 2 second-round picks. They have Carolina's second in that Sam Darnold trade. So they also select at 35 and 38. And I think their tackle situation is interesting, right? You have Becton and you have Fant. Again, I was talking to Rich Cimini today. He said at one point last year, Becton weighed 400 pounds, like literally like a legit 400 pounds. So
415 at the end of the season, I heard.
Yeah. So like, that's going to be something they need to figure out, where if they draft a tackle, then do they trade Becton? Do they put him inside? Like, that'll be something that they'll have to figure out too, with one of their picks.
And the other thing is this with the Jets is, if Becton's coming back, what position is he playing? Because George Fant did a terrific job at left tackle last year. The problem with George Fant is when you move him from left to right, you don't want to, as I've been reporting, the coaches don't want to move George Fant from the left tackle position. They want to move forward with him. So do you move Becton over the right tackle, hope that he can assimilate to that position? Very interesting to see what's going to happen, not only through draft day, but through the preseason with the Jets and the whole offensive line.
No question about it. All right, let's go stay in New Jersey. The two teams that have not had much success over the past 10 years or so. The New York Giants, they have picks at 5 and 7, and they come back around. They have that pick at the top of the second round. And I think offensive tackle has got to be one of these two picks. They have Andrew Thomas at left tackle, a gaping hole on the right side with some pretty good offensive tackles, in the class sitting there. So I think one of those two would have to be offensive tackle. And I think they'd love to get Sauce Gardner with one of those other two selections, especially if they had to move on from James Bradbury. He's a press man guy. As Croc mentioned, he's long, he's fast. It fits exactly what their inner defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, wants to do. Now, if Sauce is gone, would they go a Thibodeau route? It's a new regime. Is that the guy you want to start with? I don't know the answers to those questions, but I think you're looking at ideally Sauce, offensive tackle in some order, and then you're probably looking at pass rusher as your third potential need there. What do you think, Tone?
Yeah, I think they go offensive line 5, and here's why. Right after they select the Carolina Panthers, the Panthers took a big cornerback, J.C. Horn, last year. They've got some decent pass rushers. The Panthers, I don't think are going to take. I've never thought they're a quarterback at second. Maybe they could trade down and take a quarterback, but I think the Panthers are going to take an offensive tackle at number 6. So if you're sitting there at number 5 and number 7, and you're deciding between the offensive tackle and the pass rusher, or say Ahmad Gardner and an offensive lineman, and you take the non-offensive lineman, that offensive lineman may not be there for you, or the one that you want may not be there for you at 7 because Carolina could scoop them up. So I think that number 5 pick, very likely going to be an offensive lineman. Number 7, either the pass rusher, and I agree with you 1,000%. I think Gardner would be a great selection for them to take Ahmad Gardner at number 7.
Yeah, I like that you talked about, who they have at the cornerback position, drafting J.C. Horn last year. They also drafted Keith Taylor, and that was a guy who played a lot for them as well out of Washington. And we'll see. With J.C. Horn, they started kind of utilizing him almost like a Jalen Ramsey, where, he plays outside. They were playing him in some kind of big nickel star position type stuff as well in the game that he ended up getting hurt. So do they want to add another guy on the outside? They did bring back Dante Jackson. Maybe they are out on the cornerback position. If so, then I think that is good news for a team like the Giants, because now let's take the best offensive lineman available, have our pick at guy, and then come back at pick 7 and be able to snatch up Sauce Gardner. And there has been a lot of air with their situation with James Berry. Are they going to move on from him? He's going to be a casualty. Are they going to potentially trade him away during the draft? A lot of the questions going about that. So, I like that offensive line, and they want to continue to kind of help protect their young quarterback. They said they haven't really done a good job of putting him in position to be successful. And I mean, and then we can say a lot about Daniel Jones, but he has a lot of good traits, but I think he's feeling that time clock go off a little too quick. I think that's speeding up a lot of his decision making, and that's affecting everything as it pertains to his game. So help him with that offensive line. I don't think they can help him enough there.
No, I agree. And guys, by the way, I think the Giants would not hesitate to get out of one of these two picks to get extra ammunition for next season if they could. Tony or Eric, do you guys think that there could be a team looking to trade up here? I have trouble finding a team that would want to move up just because I think eventually teams are going to, be honest with themselves about this quarterback class and not move up for him. Maybe I'm being naive about that. I don't know. And I just don't think another team's going to want to trade up for a position player. Do you think any of these teams in the top 7 we've talked about will have an opportunity to trade down if they want to, or do you think they're going to have to stay put and pick?
Well, I mean, if a team trades up, it's probably for a pass rusher, one of the offensive linemen, or a mod. And those trades do happen. So I don't think there's going to be a huge market for that selection. It's also how far down do the Giants want to move, and what are they getting in return? I think there'll be a market. But again, whether you're talking pass rusher, offensive lineman, if we assume they take an offensive lineman with that number 5 pick, and some team wants to move up to get a pass rusher or a cornerback, remember, those are needs for the Giants. So they offset what they're getting in return compared to the player that they may be giving up on selecting.
No, I agree 100%. All right, let's go to our next team here on the list. We'll drop it down to Philly. They had 3, and now they have 2 after the trade with the Saints, where they picked up an extra 1 next year. They select 15th and 18th. And guys, I really think they can go a lot of different ways. They've needed a linebacker forever. They've needed cornerback help forever. They've been trying to find wide receivers for a long time. They've been struggling to do it. And Howie Roseman loves to always beef up the pass rush and the defensive line, and they have an aging group there. So I think the Eagles are in a great spot here in the meat of the draft where they can, Croc, really find somebody to fill one of those 4 needs.
Yeah, a lot early on, I was mocking a guy like David Ajabo to them, but with the injury now, I mean, he might fall down some boards. And I thought that would have been a great opportunity for them to upgrade over Graham, who's been hurt. He ruptured his Achilles, I believe it was, early last season. He's older as well. How's he going to be when he comes back, or he's even a free agent on this team? So, they have guys like Sweat on the defensive line, but I think they can definitely use another long-term edge rusher there. And I thought that would be a prime pick for a guy to go. Aside from that, I mean, you look at the receiver position, talked about trying to address that. And you have Devontae Smith. I really like it. But then outside of him, they haven't really gotten a whole lot out of Jalen Reagor. You have guys like Kez Watkins, who he's been a speed threat, but you still can improve from him and try to really get more of a guy that's going to be more consistent and like a big play guy out there. And then also on the back end, they can use safety help. They can use a cornerback help. So I feel like there's a lot of different directions that the Philadelphia Eagles can go here. But if it's me, I want to try to go D-line, but I don't want to just reach. Yeah. And I look at a guy like George Karlaftis, and it's like, how much do you like him? That's the guy I'm kind of looking at there, but I feel like I'm kind of forcing it a little bit.
Yeah, I think if Karlaftis is there, that's the guy with their first pick. I think if they do take receiver for the 3rd year in a row in the first round, I think one of the happiest guys on the face of the earth is going to be Matt Millen, because you look at that history there, it kind of parallels, and it's amazing. Receiver. I think cornerback would also be a consideration if Derek Stingley is still available. I think that's got to be somebody. I think Devin Lloyd is someone they'll also look hard at, because they've been needing linebacker for the longest time, and Lloyd is a terrific player.
Yeah, I think Phil will be interesting. The team they traded with, New Orleans, they pick it 16th and 19th here, guys. I know a lot of people are sold on the fact they're going to use these picks to get a quarterback. I don't see it. I don't buy it. I think they believe they can win now. They're looking for a receiver and an offensive tackle, maybe another position, but I think they're looking to make these picks. I don't think they're looking to package to move up. I don't think they're looking for a quarterback. I just think the Saints are looking for good players that they think will be there at this point in the draft, which is why they made the trade that they did. What do you think, Tone?
I think they want to come out with these 2 picks with two positions, or 2 or 3 positions, either quarterback, either receiver, or tackle. Now, the problem with the tackle is who's going to play left tackle. What left tackle is going to be there? As we've time and time again, there are no pure left tackles in this draft. You're not going to draft Trevor Penning with one of those selections and move him to left tackle. At least I don't see that happening. I mean, could they move Ramczyk over the left tackle? Possibly, but I think a good receiver will be there. I do think quarterback is in play because, I mean, could they win this year? Possibly, but they have not touched the quarterback position, and they find themselves in a rut at this point in time, and it just goes. It's a situation that's gone from bad to worse. They eventually have to address the position with a younger player.
And they might that's looking to trade up. You talked about a team that might want to go up into the top 10 with the New York Giants or one of those other teams that have multiple picks. Again, that's a lot for a class where, starting this whole process, nobody really liked these quarterbacks going in the first round. Now trade not just the multiple picks to get up there into the top 10, but the picks that you gave away for the following year as well. That's a lot invested into a quarterback in this class where a lot of people aren't really high on them.
I think the Saints are one of those teams that could potentially get up with the Vikings at 12 if they want to get up there and basically nab one of the quarterbacks. I think they're going to move into the top 10, but I think moving to 12 with the Vikings is a possibility. And remember, the Vikings made trades last year. They traded down with the New York Jets, got Christian Darrisaw, a couple extra selections, and the Darrisaw pick worked out well for him.
All right, let's go down to the bottom third of the round here, guys. The Green Bay Packers, they got a first-round pick from the Raiders in that trade for Devontae Adams, and that's at 22. They have their own pick at 28. Should we assume a wide receiver here, or are those, Packers, historical reluctance to pick a receiver in the first round going to rear its ugly head here, guys? What do you think, Croc?
I don't even know if they'll be reluctant to get a guy because of their past history of not really going receiver. But to me, it's Aaron Rodgers, man. And he seems like a no-nonsense type guy, and having to kind of carry a rookie receiver that you've invested a lot in, and he has to play right now. And you don't have all the time in the world to develop this guy and get production out of him right away. If this receiver doesn't hit the ground running and, Aaron Rodgers has to continue to tell him, well, I want you here. Just know I'm going to throw this pass, and they can't get on the same page. I feel like that's going to make him even more upset. So I don't know if I put the pressure on the receiver there to come in and have to take on whatever you were getting from Devontae Adams, which was a ton, one of the best receivers in the league. From that standpoint, I'd probably shy away from going receiver in the first round. But unless they feel like there's a guy, they met with, and he just has in the world, and his game is going to translate extremely well to the NFL right away, and not just the coaching from the NFL, but the coaching of Aaron Rodgers, I'd probably go maybe a different direction there.
Yeah, I mean, they need a right tackle badly. Trevor, that they take a guy like Tyler Smith. They could use an edge rusher, even though they're moving Rashawn Gary to the edge. They need an inside linebacker. Maybe this place where Nakobe Dean goes. They also need a tight end. You call it reluctance to take the receiver in the first round. I think it's stubbornness because they passed up a lot of good talent and took some questionable players in the past. Do I think a receiver is out of the question? No, but I think that they would probably address one of the other positions that I mentioned.
I like what they did a few years ago when they drafted 3 receivers in the mid rounds. And there's almost like, all right, we'll see which one works out. And obviously I think Valdez-Scantling, out of those guys, was Valdez-Scantling, Moore, Jamal Moore, and St. Brown. They drafted all 3 guys in the middle of 2018, I believe it was. Only one of them truly worked out, St. Brown. I mean, he's kind of whatever kind of filled in every blue moon. But I kind of like that, like just trying to see which one of these 3 guys is going to pan out. And I'd maybe go more of that than forcing it in the first round.
Well, Scantling just got a nice contract from the Kansas City Chiefs, so I think he's pretty happy the way things worked out.
Right. That's the one guy that where it was like, all right, he's a good receiver. Is he maybe that surefire wide receiver too that I think they were looking for at that time to play opposite Devontae Adams? Maybe not, but obviously big time ability, and he's gonna have a lot of fun in Kansas City.
All right, the final team, you mentioned the Chiefs. They pick at 29 and 30 from that trade with Tyreek Hill from the Miami Dolphins. So your thoughts here, guys. They signed 2 wide receivers in free agency. Neither one of them is obviously Tyreek Hill. But do they go wide receiver here? Does edge rusher, something on their defense, take precedence? They try to fill one of each. What are your thoughts, Tone, for what the Chiefs might do here?
I'm told they're going to go receiver hard, but that doesn't mean first round. I mean, in Tyreek Hill, you got to get a guy that's got a lot of speed. And I don't think there's going to be, if Chris Olave's there, he happens to fall down, that makes great amount of sense. Guy like Calvin Austin of Memphis in 2 makes a lot of sense. But I could see edge rusher because they're going to need a young edge rusher. I could see them going in the defensive secondary. Cornerback is also I think if there's a highly rated receiver, they will go that route, but there'll be a guy that runs pretty fast because that's what they need at this point in time.
I like edge. I think this is like prime area for a guy like Boye Mafe. This is prime area for a guy like Kyrie Elam. I think Elam fits of what Kansas City has done, playing a lot of man-to-man. They're guys at the line of scrimmage. That's his skill set. Their position, you talked about some of the guys that they brought in, including Valdez Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster, and then also having Terry McLaurin, who Andy Reid was just on TV, talking about how he has a really good skill set and able to kind of, display that speed. And now they just need to truly come together and to where he could be more of a focal point in the offense. But I do believe they go receiver, but just not first round.
All right. I'll give each of you guys a chance to talk about one of the 8 teams that do not have a first round pick. Anybody you find particularly interesting or guys you want to highlight, Croc? I know you kind of follow the 49ers if you want to touch on them. But these are teams going to be waiting a while before they can make their picks here. Croc, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'm actually not going to go with the 49ers. I think I'm going to actually go in the direction of the Indianapolis Colts. And I feel like this is a team that, they're going to lean on their defense and they're going to continue to kind of build there. But right now, you trade for Matt Ryan. I love their running game. They need a receiver opposite Michael Pittman Jr. And I think that's a good range for them. I see they pick right now. They have pick 42 and pick 73 that they got from the Commanders. I might spend both of those picks on receivers where they're at right now at that receiver group.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams, you never know which direction they're going to go in. I will say this. One of the first 3, one of their selections from the Rams will be a punter because there's a couple of good punters in this year's draft. We talked about one of them last year, Razzie of San Diego State, and they need a punter. I think with the Bears, they're another team screaming for receiver help. You got to bring another receiver to help Justin Fields. The Browns also need a receiver. You mentioned you mentioned the Colts. You look at the Dolphins, they could use a center, maybe Cameron Jurgens at some point in time in day 2. Also a running back once you the 3rd round area.
Hey, look, there are 2 teams in this group that are Super Bowl or bust in the AFC, and that's the Browns and the Broncos. Those are teams that I think they believe they're ready to make a run here. That's why you do what they do, to get those quarterbacks, right? So for me, I think, Tony, you hit it. The Browns need a wide receiver, and they pick at 44. I think, maybe if they can find any picks that they didn't trade for Deshaun Watson and try to move up a little bit to try to find the receiver that they like. I don't know who's going to be left at 44. If they can get like a Sky Moore there, maybe someone like that, if he's still hanging around, maybe that's a guy they look at. And then, the Broncos are just trying to, fill holes. They have a really good team. They have a really good roster. They don't have a 2nd round pick in this draft either. That also went to Seattle in that Russell Wilson trade. So I believe their first pick, if I'm not mistaken, is at 75 in this draft. So I'm not going to try to pinpoint a position there because I think that's impossible. It's the 3rd round, right? But those are 2 teams that I think really think they're Super Bowl contenders, and who they wind up in those spots will be important. I think the Rams too are fascinating. They've done a great job of finding those, mid-round guys. And, even though they don't have a lot of 1st and 2nd round picks, they have a lot of, late day 2, day 3 picks. They've made the most out of them. And they'll try to do the same again because the Rams' first pick in this draft, I believe, is pick 100, right? It's, let's see here. Yeah, 104. So they're going to have to wait a while to make their pick too. So I think that's something that's worth keeping an eye on. All right.
Las Vegas Raiders. I mean,
oh, yeah, good point too, Tone.
They right now, I believe they got Alex Leatherwood penned in at the right tackle. I think Alex Leatherwood's going to play every position on the offensive line before they really realize they made a mistake. But I think they start off with the 86th pick. And guess what? Could get a good right tackle with that 86th pick. Maybe Abraham Lucas of Washington State's available. Kellen Diesch of Arizona State. Daniel Falele. I mean, do they take a chance on a guy that's 380 pounds, but it's very athletic? It would be an intriguing roll of the dice for a guy like Falele, as the 3rd round closes out when the Raiders are finally called to the clock.
Yeah, I think that could be a good mixer. I think that's interesting. All right, let's go to our fan evaluations. Again, we got about 20 minutes here. We'll try to go about a minute or so, maybe 90 seconds on each guy. We have about a dozen guys here we want to get to. So let's rock and roll here, boys. We'll start at running back. Let's go Pierre Strong first and foremost. Who wants to lead us off here on Pierre Strong?
I'll go. Pierre Strong's one of my favorite backs in this draft. He's going to go much earlier than people expect. He could be off the board in the third round. He's a triple threat back that somehow fell off the scouting radar this year. Should have gotten a Senior Bowl invite, played at the Shrine Bowl, and dominated. He's a tough inside runner. He could turn the corner. He's a terrific pass catcher out of the backfield. He's not a feature back, but I think he's going to be a third, fourth round pick. That would be great as a rotational back on Sunday. Absolutely love his game.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that jumps out to you right away is he has that straight line speed that teams are going to covet. I think he's a little specific to the scheme. He's more of a one cut outside zone type run game. I felt like when he was running inside sometimes, one thing that was very clear is he doesn't like to stop his feet. He wants to be able to get there, see the gap, and hit it. He will hit that hole hard. But when he has to kind of be a little bit more patient, I thought that was where he kind of ran into a little bit of trouble. I wasn't necessarily wowed by the change of direction or the ability to kind of really make guys miss in a phone booth. But again, that home run threat that he is, anytime he touches the ball, especially if he gets in that offense that moves that offensive line, he gets to pick that hole, he'll be big time there. I did think I like how Tony talked about the hands and him being a triple threat. Soft hands, really soft hands. I thought he was a good route runner, even though they didn't really utilize it a whole lot. In pass protection, he was okay as well.
All right, let's jump over to wide receiver, guys. Let's go Justin Ross first, who to me is fascinating. He's a wide receiver that's had a lot of injury issues. He had the neck problem. Some people thought it could be career ending out of Clemson. And he's a guy that did not test great. He's a downfield threat. He's one of those downfield threats that doesn't necessarily, Croc, have elite speed.
Right. And one thing that was interesting with him was he didn't create vertical separation, right? Just is he able to run by guys and get on top of them and stack them and catch the ball from there? Didn't quite see that. Also didn't see short area separation. Now, I have a little pause because these are some of the same issues I had with T. Higgins, and clearly at the NFL level has not been an issue. But I thought, is it the quarterback that's making it difficult on him and maybe not putting the ball in good spots consistently? That was something that I took into account. I thought his route manipulation was not there. And what I mean by that is just kind of, using his ability to maybe, get in guys' blind spots, turn them around, sit his route down, kind of adjust his speed and play with different pace throughout route. Wasn't quite seeing that as well. So I kind of walked away not as high on him as I thought I was going to be, especially, you see what he did as a true freshman, balling out there, making plays in the national championship game. I just didn't quite see that guy this past year. And maybe it's due to some of the injuries he's dealt with.
It's going to drop like a rock. There's no doubt about it. It's, as Eric was saying, 2019, if he's eligible for the draft and he enters the draft, he's probably a top 25 pick. Had the major injury, with the neck injury, which he sat on the sidelines in 2020, had some minor injuries this year, but looked like a fraction of the receiver in 2021 that we saw in 2019. I saw a lot of drop passes, balls that went through his hands that, you wouldn't think Justin Ross would drop those passes. Did not test well. He doesn't play fast either. You can't get vertical separation. He doesn't have that speed and doesn't have that quickness. I think everyone thought coming into the season, we were hopeful with Justin Ross, maybe a top 45 pick. I think he's going to go somewhere in the fifth round right now.
All right, let's take a wide receiver, guys. Romeo Doubs out of Nevada, 6'2", 201, did not work out at the combine. Tony, what do you think of him?
Solid player. I mean, one of Carson Strong's favorite pass catchers. He's nice. He's not great. I think he's a fourth, maybe third round pick. He's maybe a number 3 receiver at the next level. Catches the ball relatively well. He's a tough guy. He extends. He gets vertical. He knows how to separate. Fought for a lot of those deep passes, but he doesn't have the true downfield speed. As you said, I think he was going to run last week or this week, right before the draft. Hasn't really tested before the draft, but he doesn't look very fast on film. He doesn't have that second gear. Does a decent job catching the ball. I don't think he's a natural pass catcher. Again, I think he's going to go in the third, maybe third, but more likely fourth round.
Yeah, this is a guy who I was watching him and I'm like, man, am I going to get Quentin Cephas out of Wisconsin, or am I going to get Chris Godwin, when he's at Penn State? Like, he kind of reminded me of a blend of those two guys. I think underneath, short area quickness and twitch and like fluidity, that's there. Nice bend at his hips and things like that. I think he was like this stiff receiver that was there as well. Being able to kind of separate right now on like slants and intermediate routes, good. Again, I think, a lot like what Tony said, the vertical aspect of his game, that's going to be in question, because when he did run by guys, it's like, okay, UNLV and those type of guys, right? Where it's like, okay, like he's beating this guy like a drum. Can he do it at the next level? Now, I watched him at the Senior Bowl week, and I thought he did a good job getting on top of guys, and he does well with, once he gets on top, stacking guys and kind of being able to shield guys from there and kind of maybe use a little chicken wing to kind of push off. But I don't think he's going to be that vertical threat in the wide open field like we saw at sometimes while he was playing at Nevada. So good receiver in certain aspects of his game. Not quite sure. Again, Quentin Cephas or Chris Godwin. And there's a big huge difference in how those guys have played in the NFL. But he kind of reminds me of both of them.
All right, let's go a deep one here, Tone. Khalil Pimpleton out of Central Michigan, 5'9", 175. Had a nice college career. 62 catches, 960 yards, 4 touchdowns in his final year with the Chippewas. And he had a really good 2019 season, too, when he had 82 catches.
Yeah, he's that size on a good day because he's probably a little bit small on that. The thing with Pimpleton is his greatest value at the next level is going to be as a return specialist. He's got to perform as a return specialist, returning punts and kicks over the summer, or he's not going to make a roster. Does too much double catching for what I like in the MAC. You see him drop a lot of passes slipping through his hands, does not show naturally soft hands. He's fast, but he doesn't have the second gear. Again, he may make some nice receptions in camp this summer, but it's how he does as a return specialist, which will determine whether or not he's going to make a final roster. He's not going to get drafted. I'm sure he's going to be signed soon after the draft. And he should be being brought onto a roster. He's got to make it on special teams.
For a guy that is smaller, and he kind of reminds you of what you think you're going to see, right? The quick twitch, the ability to kind of separate from guys immediately. Tough to get hands on at the line of scrimmage. But when you do get hands on him, the route is done. And I thought that was one thing that was very consistent throughout the films that I watched. Another thing, like when I'm watching some of these smaller guys, I kind of I have a requirement. Like, do you play big? And what I mean by that is just, can you play to the point where maybe your lack of size isn't that much of a hindrance? And for him, I thought he played small. And that's another issue as well. Run after catch and things like that, I felt like it could be a little bit better. But again, that initial separation, if he gets off clean, especially from the slot, he's only going to be able to play in the slot. If he does that, he'll be all right. But I'm with Tony. Not so sure if this guy gets drafted or where he gets drafted, but special teams will be where he kind of makes his niche. And then if he can kind of work from there to maybe get stronger at the top of routes, maybe a team can have a little bit more of a role for him.
All right, let's go to the offensive line. Abraham Lucas. Tony, you mentioned him earlier in the program, an offensive tackle out of Washington State. He's from that air raid system, has probably as many or more pass protection snaps as any offensive lineman in this draft class. I watched him, guys. I thought he has really good feet. You wonder about his play strength a little bit. Croc, what did you see?
Man, that's crazy because my first two notes here, speed does not threaten him a whole lot. I thought he did a really good job against speed. But then the next one got pushed back multiple times on the bull rush, driven back into the quarterback's pocket. I thought that was something that I saw a few times. Now, when I went from watching him against Oregon to watching him against USC, I thought he handled speed. I thought he handled power. I thought he was much more consistent all around in his game. I thought he handled stunts extremely well throughout that time. His pass set was pretty consistent. A few times see him get knocked off balance, but I don't know if that was something where I note to say, oh, okay, this is going to happen to him consistently. The first game I watched was Oregon, and he had to go against Kayvon Thibodeau. And I felt like it was an up and down performance. And again, he's going against someone that's predicted to go top 8 or whatever. But again, USC and some of the other games I watched, I thought I saw much more consistency. I liked him, especially for a guy. I like to watch the film and let the film tell me how big or small someone is or anything like that. He looked like the biggest guy on the offensive line, but I thought he definitely was the best pro prospect on that Washington State offensive line as well.
Yeah, he just seems unsure of himself to me in pass protection. He's not very consistent in pass protection. I love his run blocking. I think he's a terrific run blocker in a system which rarely uses tight ends. I think he's a natural right tackle at the next level. He's got growth potential. He's already a big guy. I think he's someone that, could be selected in the third round. And if coached properly, I would think that Lucas is going to be starting midway through his rookie season, a la Spencer Brown, who the Buffalo Bills drafted in the third round out of Northern Iowa last year.
Tony, you think he'll get into the second round? I think he will last till round 3.
I think because of the depth of the offensive tackle position, he's going to go early round 3. Could he go late round 2? I think that's a possibility, but I think he'll be around in the third round.
All right, now we're going to go really deep here. Lenore Ryan with Kyle Duggar came on the draft scene a couple of years ago. They have a wide receiver this year that people like, but then, I was talking to someone, and they're like, keep an eye on this offensive lineman, Jason Poe. You want to talk about digging deep here to, I believe this is Division II, right, guys, if I'm not mistaken?
Mercer, right.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, at a Mercer. Sorry, yeah, I apologize. Not Lenore.
He did go to Lenore Ryan originally,
I
believe.
Yes, he was also a Lenore Ryan. So, give me your thoughts on Poe here, guys. Why don't we start with you, Croc?
Not a whole lot of pass protection snaps. This is a team that primarily leaned on the run game. I thought from that standpoint, he did a good job of kind of moving and being able to play in space and get on blocks. But, is he like a power blocker? Is he a zone scheme type guy? It was kind of hard for me to kind of figure that aspect of his game out. Didn't really get a whole lot away from him as a pass protector. He's really kind of this smaller guy, built at 6'1", 300 pounds. I think that's even short for a guy that plays in the interior offensive line. But there was one thing that kind of I questioned a little bit. A guy that is that small, you're supposed to win with leverage. And I thought he'd get a little too high and kind of knock back. So those were things that kind of jumped out to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's the flavor of the month. He had this great pro day. He ran 4.85. He jumped through the roof, and now everybody's in love with him, even though they never saw him take a snap. And when you watch him take a snap, it's exactly what Eric says. The guy doesn't bend his knees. He does not block with leverage. And when you're 6'1" and you're blocking upright, you're going to get annihilated. You're going to get annihilated at the next level. He's exceptional on his feet. You watch him pull across the line of scrimmage. You watch him get out to the second, even the third level. He plays with a nasty attitude. He's explosive at the point, but his fundamentals stink. And unless he learns to bend his knees and block with leverage, he's never going to get off a practice squad. I understand everyone looks at the 40 time and the vertical jump, and they fall in love with this guy who they had no idea about, before the season began. But the film, when you watch the film, you're like, he even shows a bit of stiffness in his game, which is not good for a smaller guy like that, or a shorter guy like that. So he's got a ways to go. Does he have the upside potential? Yes, just based on the athleticism. But, offensive linemen that are 6'1", have an uphill climb to begin with to make it on Sunday. 6'1" offensive linemen who don't bend their knees and block with leverage. I mean, you might as well forget it.
All right, let's go to Donovan West, center prospect out of Arizona State, 6'3", 296, 33-inch arms, which is nice for a center. Tony, what'd you see out of him?
I mean, I think he's a junior who I think should have stayed in school one more year, because you mentioned his size. He barely broke 5'3" in the 40 with an average 10 split. I mean, he's not a zone blocker. When you watch the film, I see a guy who's constantly falling off of blocks rather than finishing off defenders. Is he a zone blocker? No. Is he a power gap guy? No. A lot of people have him as a mid-round choice. I have him as a free agent. I think he made a mistake and really should have gone back to school for another year of development of his game, just physical maturity.
Yeah, one of the first questions I have in my notes is, does he have the power to move guys? And then as I continue to watch, I made another note of it and says, doesn't move guys, but he also doesn't get knocked back a whole lot. You're just not getting much push from him. And maybe because he plays center, you don't need it necessarily as you will with maybe a guard that's moving out there. And I thought he moved out in space pretty well, but I have heard a lot of people really high on him, wanting him to go late second round, early third round, and I don't know if I saw quite that.
All right, let's jump to the defensive line, guys. A player I'm not really that familiar with, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about him. Curtis Brooks. Tony, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, Curtis Brooks is a guy who was basically ignored by scouts coming into the season, this was his second senior season, and he played really good in 2020 and played really good in 2021. Now, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's explosive. He's got tremendous first step quickness. Unlike Jason Poe, who we spoke about, Brooks actually bends his knees and plays with great pad level. In my opinion, he's a natural 3 technique tackle. The explosion off the snap, the fact that he gets leverage on opponents, the fact that he plays with great pad level, the change of direction, the ability to get down the line of scrimmage and chase the play in pursuit. I don't know that Brooks is going to get drafted, but I could absolutely see him doing well in camp this summer and then making it on a team that plays a 4-man front and they keep him as their 8th defensive lineman.
How about you, Croc? Oh, you're muted, pal. You're muted, pal.
All right, here we go. The first thing I noticed on him, one of the first snaps I watched, he got blown off the ball, right? And they have him playing, and they play this kind of weird defense where they have like 3 down linemen. And I really walked away saying, he's not a nose tackle. I didn't think he was a nose tackle. I think he is better suited to play more in a 4-3, and he can be a 4-3 defensive tackle just fine. But where he kind of messed up, wasn't able to really handle double teams extremely well. He would get kind of knocked back. I thought as I continued to watch, I saw better pass rush moves. I think his motor was really good. I thought his hand usage when he was one-on-one was solid, but I didn't think they did him any favors playing him so much in the middle at that 0.
All right, let's go to the edge position. A guy that I like, D'Angelo Malone. I thought he sparked a little bit at the Senior Bowl. 6'3", 240, an undersized guy. I know he didn't test it at the combine, but he did later on. I think his numbers were his testing numbers were good. I think you see the ability to win off the edge. He has a couple different ways of winning. He's got over 33-inch arms, which you like to see. I think Malone, if he gets to day 3, will be a really valuable day 3 pick as a guy you can try to develop as an edge, Tony.
Yeah, or a traditional 4-3 outside linebacker, because he's got that athleticism. And when you watch him, he's winning off the edge in Conference USA. But you also see him move well about the field. He can get out in space and make plays. He makes plays in pursuit. You mentioned his pro day workout, ran 4.55, which is a lot faster than what a lot of people thought. Coming into the 2020 season, when he was a senior, scouts had graded him as a 3rd-round pick. I think he surprised a lot of people by going back for that second senior season, as the NCAA gave all the players because of the COVID year. I don't think he was a much better player in 2021 than he was in 2020. I also think that he's better off the line rather than standing over tackle or coming out of a 3-point stance. He's got a lot of upside. I think with Malone, he's just going to have to learn to make plays moving in reverse rather than just moving up the field, which is what he did in college. A lot of upside potential, smart guy, athletic guy, also a tough guy. I mean, he does not back down to a challenge. He even though he's a little bit smaller, he's a punch-in-your-face guy that does not give up on snaps. So I think he could be a 3rd-round choice. It's just a matter of scheme fit. It's just a matter of if you're going to use him as a quote-unquote off-the-ball linebacker or a 4-3 linebacker, as I like him, it may take a little bit of time.
I love what you said. You said a lot about him there that I agree with. The first thing you mentioned was pursuit, and that's one of my first notes as well. Good pursuit from the backside. So he did show a lot of athleticism. One of the things that I was noticing right away was, he wins with quickness rather than strength. I thought strength was something where he just had, he didn't want anything to do with it. Being able to win at the line of scrimmage, engage, use his hands, things like that. He wanted to win with speed. And there were other times where he'd kind of see if he could win with speed. And, if I can't win with speed, I'm just going to back off and then see if I can kind of find a different way to try to make a play rather than go through someone. That was pretty consistent. I didn't think that he had the strength to play against the run. I thought where he did do well was he was relentless. So where's that right here? There's another strength right here. With quickness right in the train. There's a note that I made where even when guys get hands on him and they have him and maybe they drive him back 3-4 yards, he doesn't give up on the play from there. He'll still fight through to try to make a tackle, and a lot of times he would. So I agree with you. I wasn't even viewing him, Tony, as a more 4-3 off-ball backer, but I think that's where he's he would be much better suited to play that type of position. I was viewing him, okay, is he a 4-3 in? Definitely not that. Okay, maybe is he a 3-4 outside linebacker because he likes to stand up? Okay, I can maybe do that. But if you're saying 4-3 outside linebacker, I think he'd excel there more than the other two and positions to be like your primary pass rusher.
All right, let's stick on the edge. An Alabama player no one's really talked about, mostly because he only played in one game this year. Broke his foot in the first game of the year against Miami, 6'3", 241. Good arm length of 33 inches. Croc, what do you think of Christopher Allen?
Yeah, and he's another guy that talked about, being maybe more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. He likes to stand up and rush from there. I thought as a pass rusher, I would have liked to see a little bit more burst in that first step off of the edge because it was clear he kind of wanted to win with speed, but he did a really good job of a lot of times controlling and setting that edge. So I think as a 3-4 outside backer, he'd excel there. A guy who can drop out into space. I thought he was fine playing there. Not the most twitched up guy, but has that versatility to kind of do multiple things. Very active hands, I thought, in his pass rush, hand swipes, things like that. Talked about the one game he played in this year, playing against Miami, got a sack right off the edge where he swiped those hands down and dipped that shoulder and got to the ball carrier. So 3-4 outside linebacker who could drop into space and also have pass rush value as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a typical Alabama linebacker. I mean, he's explosive, he's athletic, and he shows some versatility. I think the missing all but one game this season obviously hurt his draft stock. I think he's a guy that if he played as expected, could have gone third, fourth round. With the way you're looking at him now, he's a seventh rounder who's got to return from that injury. And he's got some scheme versatility. I don't know that he's going to make a roster. He may be a practice squad guy while he gets back into the mode of things. Wasn't a great play. Was a guy who played faster than he timed. Showed a good amount of athleticism. I liked his pass rush ability. He shows the athleticism to drop off the line of space. But I think a guy that's going to have to make it through the practice squad while he returns from injury.
All right, we got two guys left in the back end here. Kobe Bryant, cornerback out of Cincinnati. Croc, he had to play across from Sauce Gardner, so he got all the passes in his direction here. Unfortunately for him, I remember I think we discussed him when we were hanging out in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and both of us like what he brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, first of all, I mean, he was the Jim Thorpe Award winner, best defensive back in the nation. Now, is he the best prospect in the nation? That's a whole nother question. I'd say no. You would like to see a little bit more natural athleticism jump off the screen, but where I think he excels, man, he is solid with his technique. I think he won a good amount with his technique and was able to get in phase, get his head around and make plays on the ball. Yeah. He brings a certain level of kind of physicality from that standpoint. I think the play anticipation is solid and he's going to have to improve on that at the next level because again, he's not the most athletic cornerback out there. So a lot of good things, but I think the one thing that's going to continue to kind of knock him down a little bit is he plays to what he ran at the combine. Not very fast, not overly twitched up. Watch him at the Senior Bowl. You were able to see kind of his movements where he kind of gets stuck in the ground trying to get his hips around. He's going to have to really lean on playing with good, consistently good technique and anticipation.
Well, I think he ran like 4.44 at the combine, which is much faster than
I thought he ran 4.55 or I'm probably wrong.
So I think, and I agree with what Eric said. I thought for the longest time he was much more consistent making plays with his back to the ball than his higher rated teammate.
And Tony, he was a 4.54 at the combine.
I apologize.
Okay. That's okay.
I'm looking at,
but that probably matches up more with what you've seen on film.
4.54. Yes, he was. Okay. I would agree with Eric in the sense that I thought he did a much better job or was at least more consistent than Ahmad Gardner over the past 2 years, getting his head back around and making plays with his back to the ball and tracking the ball in the air. Obviously, and I would agree, even though I was wrong on the 40 time, he doesn't play fast. So I don't know that you're going to put him in man coverage. I do think he's going to be a heck of a nickel back at the next level, a guy that you can line up over the slot receiver, a guy that you can line up on the flanks, like his playing style a lot. As Eric said, the technique was always there.
Now, and if he is a guy, I mean, again, talk about the Houston Texans potentially needing a cornerback, and they don't want to take a guy in the first 2 rounds. Now you're talking about round 3. I think that's a guy that can fit more of a cover 2 high type system where if he does play man with a safety over top, he'll be solid. If he want to stick to and play a lot of that cover 2 that they like to do, they he'd be good in that as well.
All right, the final guy on our list here, and again, the fans did a great job submitting all these names. We have another 12 to 15 that'll be ready to go for our first show next week on Monday. Make sure you guys tune in for that. Marquise Bell out of Florida A&M, and boy, he tested great. 4.4 140, 123-inch broad jump, 4.46, pardon me, short shuttle in Indianapolis, and 32 3/8-inch arms, 6'2", 212. As far as traits goes, Tony, pretty impressive.
And he shows that on film too. I mean, right now I have him listed as a 5th round pick because that's how highly I think of this guy. He plays to those athletic. He shows solid ball skills. He's got to improve his back pedal. He's got to learn to flip his hips and transition a little bit better. Occasionally over pursues running plays, but he's explosive. He's tough against the run. He sells down on a blitz. He's got solid ball skills. From what I see, he's the type of guy you can play over the slot receiver, and he's not going to be a liability. He's not there yet coming out of Florida A&M, but I love his upside, and I think this is a guy you take somewhere in the middle of day 3. You're going to use him as a dime back. You're going to have maybe use him as your 4th safety, although more and more teams we see lining up 3 safeties on the field these days. He could be your 3rd safety and play him on special teams. I think Bell is one of those guys that's kind of being overlooked because he didn't play in a big school, but he's got a tremendous amount of upside potential.
Yeah, Tony talked about him being a dime backer, man. I thought he played very well there around the box. That was kind of one of the notes that I made, like, man, looks at home in the box or playing kind of in that area, or even if he's coming down as a safety, the physicality was there, fighting through blockers was there, making tackles, the aggressiveness was there, the closing speed was there. And I believe that the underneath coverage ability is there as well, especially for someone that is as big as him, 6'2" and 212 pounds, but as athletic as he is. I think we're just kind of seeing the beginning of someone who can develop into a long-term, if not special teamer, great special teamer, but maybe a guy that can potentially get some snaps and be a starter by year 3.
Guys, great information, great stuff. Again, folks, as a reminder, you can find draft season twice next week. We'll have an episode coming out late on Monday or midday Monday, then midday Wednesday too. Monday will be kind of our top questions heading into the draft. We're going to do a little bit of that. We're going to do latest buzz. We'll do some more fan prospects that you guys submitted evaluations for. And then on Wednesday afternoon, we'll have up our final mock draft before the draft on Thursday. Then we'll have reactions to the first round coming up Friday morning. Then we'll react to the entire draft for a show we'll record and air on Sunday. After the draft, we'll record that after the draft on Saturday night. For Tony Pauline, for Eric Crocker, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us today on draft season. We'll see you next time.